We are back here on Fighting Lines with Brian Siano with Jimmie Rivera. Jimmie Rivera joins us now. Of course, the BKFC fighter, longtime UFC contender who had a great fight at BKFC 82 in Newark and now hung up, I guess, not putting the gloves in the middle of Max as a BKFC, but putting the wraps down, as he calls it, a possible career. Of course, there is a little caveat that he threw out there we'll talk to him about right now. But, Jimmie, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. A great fight for you against Mason. If that is your swan song, walk us through what was going through your mind with this whole situation, because, of course, Frankie Edgar was the one that was supposed to be on the card with you. You know, the Jersey guys going at it, getting the whole state there, you know, North Jersey, South Jersey, mixing it up there. But then, of course, he has issues with, I guess, the certification process, the medicals getting through. They decided it wasn't right for him to try to fight at this point. And you get Timmy Mason on 1 week's notice, a guy who is now half a foot taller, half a foot longer than you. What was going through your mind as the limbo was there, as the switch was made? What were you thinking about this fight before you even got into the squared circle?
Yeah, like Saturday morning, Frankie texted me, says, "Hey, can you text me to talk?" And I'm like, "All right." And in my head, I'm like, "All right, he is gonna have to pull out because he's like an injury or something like that." Then we get on the phone. He's like, "Hey, they're not letting me right now compete. Something with my medicals." And I'm like, "Dude, just keep me posted if you need help, a doctor." I mean, Frankie and I go way back. He helped me train for the Uriah Faber fight, and helped me get that win as a training partner, and trained with him and known him for over a decade now. So when that happened, I talked to my manager the next day, and something with medicals was up. I wasn't exactly sure because it's not my business, but he from there Sunday I heard they flew someone in to make a replacement so I could still fight, and Timmy Mason took out 1 week's notice, and that was kind of tough. It was like one of those things that I had to convince my coach, like thanks to Feldman and BKFC, if we had to replace, my coach was like not really for it because we trained for a 5'5" righty that moved a lot. Now we're going to a 5'10" lefty who just comes forward with a reach. So it was a way different game. But sitting down thinking about it, speaking to my wife about it, I'm a professional. I fought guys like this before. I fought Daniel Strauss, who's a 5'8" lefty, a year ago in Connecticut, and I'm like, I trained my ass off. And I came this far and sacrificed so much, like time with my kids, work, etc., that I cannot not fight. I'm like, I gotta fight. So I was like, yo, just bring Timmy on. Let's do it. Let's fight. I told my coach, I'm like, listen, just be there and back me, and let's take it. And obviously, it was very successful, and it was a great fight for the night.
It absolutely was. And, your first fight in the BKFC against Howard H.D. Davis, very similar, tall, lanky guy that you had to get inside on and avoid those jabs like you did with Mason. So you said there was, a little bit of hesitancy, more so from, it seems like, your team than you. Was it partly pushing through because of this being your last fight in your mind? Was it, that you couldn't wait, you couldn't give up fighting in Jersey? What was it that really drove you for this fight? And I got you ready. And what did you have to do to change up that game plan? What was within a week? Did you have to watch a ton of video on him? Did you have to just completely rework things, or was it just certain tweaks you had to make? What was the situation like getting that ready?
I mean, once I found out it was a lefty, it wasn't much to do. I watched some tape. I got a couple fights from the BKFC app. I watched him and Brendan Allen, who's a similar style, but he's a lot. Brendan Allen's just as tall and has a good reach. I watched that fight, see how he did, because the fight before that he had like a first round KO, and I'm like, all right, it was like such a quick fight, and I'm like, not that I could watch really to see how he fights and what he does. So I watched the Allen fight, and on Wednesday I did some light drilling with one of my teammates, who RSA, who's a lefty, a little shorter than him, but very good lefty. Worked with him, and then literally Saturday night in the locker room, we came up with our game plan right before going out. We drilled it for warmed up for 15 minutes or so before the fight started. Worked that game plan, and then really just executed it and just went in there. It was one of those fights that I do like. I do like someone coming forward like Timmy was, so it makes stuff a little easier. As being fighter IQ, when someone's moving so much and making so many angles is a little tougher. Like a Frankie Edgar, Timmy was a little bit easier in the fact that he was going to come forward. I wouldn't have to chase him. So I was really looking forward to that kind of style, and my coach and I did the game plan. We worked it. I've been in over 35 fights. So it's nothing different. Just had to change it up, go in there and control the fight.
And obviously, you had a lot planned for this fight, for this night, because you had all your brothers and sisters from the Elmwood Park Police Department in New Jersey there on the walk out there to support you. You had a bunch more in the stands that people didn't even see, but definitely heard as the fight went on. You know, you had, of course, in your mind, this is probably going to be your last one. So there's a lot going into this one emotionally. You know, all the support that you had there showing up for the BKFC, their first one in Jersey. You know, I'm sure there was a little bit of pressure on your shoulders besides it possibly being your last one, but being that first one in Jersey at home at the Prudential Center. And things went pretty well for you. I mean, there was the one part in the second round where you kind of got caught early on and you went down yourself, and I could see you visibly frustrated getting up, like, how did I let that happen? But otherwise, in the end of the first round, you drop him, you keep going, you know, catching him when he's coming in, you get the finish in the third round. I mean, obviously it wasn't the script as far as Frankie being there, but otherwise, I don't think it could have gone more perfectly for you for the night.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Timmy Mason's no scrub. He's a tough SOB. He goes in there and he fights. You know, one of the Danes, he's really good from the clinch. So anytime we came in close and he went and tried to tie me up and strike, I tied him up to get that break. You know, that's like one of his key things I watched, that he was really good in the clinch. So I wanted to take that away from him. He could take a shot and give a shot, as you saw in the fight. He hit me with a nice uppercut in that second round, where when I watched the fight over again yesterday morning, I was like, what dropped me? And it was, you know, it's the punch you don't see. It was that beautiful uppercut he threw right after the cross, caught me, got back up a little frustrated, but I didn't let it throw off my game plan. Just went back in there, stuck to my game plan, and had a nice knockdown right at the end of the second round, which, you know, I feel like my knockdown was a lot more established, more dominant. You know, he got up and he was still a little stinky leg watching the fight. Don't remember that then and there, but like rewatching the fight, I could tell he was still hurt when he was getting up. And the ref said something to him in between the second and third round, and all I could catch was like, or I'm going to stop the fight. And I don't know what he said, but when I came in that third round and I watched the tape over and over again, because I was like, I don't know if it was the right hand to the body or the right hand to the head. When I do that right hand to the body, that's what put him down. The right hand to the head hit, but barely hit. Like he was already going down. I feel like I almost basically missed that punch, but I got to give it up to him. Thank you, thank you for him taking the last minute replacement. It's not like he's finding a scrub. You know, I'm really well seasoned. And going back to what you were saying before, there was so much just fighting in Newark with my family, my kids there, my friends, my family, my brothers and sisters, and the police department. Knowing that this was going to be my last fight, you know, only a couple people knew that this was my last. My coaches knew, but besides my coaches, a couple people, my wife, that this was my last fight. So I had a lot to prove, and I didn't fight well my last fight against Kai Stewart. I was not mentally there, and I did a lot of mental and physical work to get where I wanted to be. Being fresh each round, not tired, warmed up for 15, 20 minutes, felt great. Like just a lot of preparation to get in that headspace that I get my hand raised.
Well, you know, you say you weren't at your peak performance against Kai, but I mean, it was a great fight. It was a tight fight. I even thought that there was a knockdown that they kind of didn't give you that you should have gotten that would have changed the scoring. Maybe would have changed the fight if they had given the way that it should have been. But now you say that, you know, that you weren't feeling yourself then. You want to go out, but you're only 36 now. I mean, in most sports, sure, that is a lot of, you know, there's a lot of players at this point, they're probably well past their prime, but we've seen some great things from you still in the last couple of years. And we've seen in the fight game some of these guys that are able to continue into their 40s. And, you know, I mean, you even had Houston Alexander fight until the guy was 50. Why at 36 do you feel like now is the time for you to hang it up and start the next chapter of your life?
I mean, it's tough. Listen, you know, when I left there, it was a little open-ended. Not a lot of fighters get to pick when they retire and how they end off. You see a lot of guys usually retire after numerous losses or KOs and all that. You know, to be able to fight in my backyard in Newark, fight again at the Rock, at the Prudential Center for my second time. My first was in the UFC where I had a victory. To fight there again and to go out on my own terms it's huge. You know what I mean? You know, not a lot of fighters get to do that. And the fact that I said, you know, that I wanted to do it and I did it, you know, would be really hard for me to come back. Now, granted, if it's like, hey, we're coming back to Newark, Frankie's clear to go, we could get this fight going, you know, that really appeases me. If it's, you know, Frankie or one of these high-level legends that, you know, been around that, you know, doesn't have to be a Jersey native, they say, hey, we want you to fight this guy, and the money situation, obviously, because I have, you know, a roof to provide and food to put on the table for my kids and my family, that could change the perspective, you know what I mean? But right now, as it is, I mean, I don't think it could get any sweeter than how the fight ended and how I wanted to go out. So it's really tough. It's one of those things that I like. If you ask me now, I would be like no. But if something came along the line and it was just too good to be true, like this fight, I wasn't sure when I was going to fight again. I had no idea when they came to Newark. I'm like, hey, put me on that Newark card. Talked to my manager Abe from first round, puts me on the card, and not only that, we're looking at Lou Lopez and like, hey, would you fight Frankie? I'm like, I'm cool with Frankie, but he knows his business. At the end of the day, yeah, of course I would fight him, and that was just kind of everything fell in line. I know it almost broke up at the end, but again, BKFC Dave Feldman kept it together, kept me on the card, which I really appreciate. And New Jersey got to see what BKFC was about, and I had a lot of people for the first time come see me fight because they never, all my fights were far away. So to be close to home and like, hey, I'm gonna go to your fight. We're excited to go because you're right here in Newark. It's not, Connecticut where it's 3.5, 4 hours away, or in another state. It was huge, and I had so many people come up to me after the fight, the next day or message me, the past couple of days saying, hey, it was awesome to go see it. I was so entertained by the BKFC, how the fights were exciting. It was nonstop. A lot of people never even heard of the BKFC. So we opened up a new doorway for them to come into Jersey. And, if they go to New York City, I would be super excited. New York City is my second backyard, but it's just one of those things that they really are competing with the UFC. They put on as many shows. They're really put on those fights. The whole night was exciting. There was no mixed match of fights. Every fight was exciting. Every fight pretty much ended, whether a TKO or a KO. I think there was only one or maybe two fights that actually went the distance the whole night.
Yeah, they were the first two of the night. Every other one ended before they went all five. I mean, some of them went longer, like obviously the Perry fight when almost Perry Stevens went into the fifth round somehow. I mean, Jeremy was taking a beating at times, still lasted to the fifth round, but there was not a second, even the ones that went to decision, there was not a boring second in those fights. So a great showing by the BKFC in New Jersey for the first time for sure, in your backyard. How hard of it was a decision for you to come to this point? I mean, you are 36, so, that, like we said, that sometimes that's older in sports, especially combat sports. Sometimes, I mean, either way, for you, it's basically half your life, that you've been fighting. You started as an amateur at 18, you became a pro at 20. So, at 36, half your life has been as a professional fighter, basically. How hard was that for you to give that up and, to go a different direction at this point?
It's so bittersweet because, I'm going in with a young gun and I'm dominating with such a performance. Like, listen, anybody can get caught. Don't matter who you are, whether you're in your prime or you're 35, 36, anybody can get caught. But it's the fact of what you do after you get caught and get back up and keep moving forward. That's what really matters. And, it's that bittersweet where, like, man, I can still hang. I can still do this stuff. But at the same time, I know how my body is. And, it's not as physical as my body is mentally, taking all those hits and all those training sessions of boxing and getting punched in the head. It's like one of those things I want to not be a vegetable when I get older. So that's something I take in account. And it's a hard decision to make. Again, it's been bittersweet. It's just like I had Connor come up to me afterwards and it's like, hey, mate, man, you sure you're retired? You look unbelievable. Like your changes of level, striking, all that. And I'm like, I mean, hey, man, money talks. But I go, no, I'm like, man, I've done a lot. This is over, including my amateur career, is over 50 fights. And I'm not as up there as like a Donald Cerrone or a Jim Miller, but I've done a lot. I've been through a lot of wars. I fought the biggest names, from John Dodson to Pedro Munoz to Aljamain Sterling, Peter Yan. I fought Uriah Faber, my most notable win in my career. And like I fought big names. I went to war, and I've had some serious injuries too that I had to battle back from. So at this time, it's like, it's that kind of perfect moment to walk off in the sunset and enjoy that win and have everybody around, my friends and family, and especially my kids and wife, to be there and see me, even a couple boo-boos, but dad has still got his hand raised and finished the fight.
I mean, if Connor really wants you back, you could just, say, it's my time. He's giving out Rolexes. I don't know. Maybe that could sweeten the deal a little bit. He gave Dave one for his birthday. Let's go. If you want Jimmie Rivera back, Altera needs some watch here. We'll see. But if they can sweeten the pot enough one day. But, if that's not the case, and this is a career for you, as you said, it's been a great one. You've been all over the world. You've been, fighting some of the biggest names in your division the whole career. What have been some of your favorite fights? Was it your UFC debut against Brimage, which is also your first time you fought overseas when you were in Scotland, or the first Newark fight when you were, fighting against Alcantara and got fight of the night? Was it this one here, finishing the Swan Song in Jersey? What have been some of your favorites throughout your career that you'll always remember?
There's four that stick out right away, and you pretty much name it all. Getting a 2-week notice to fight Brimage having a cut, I don't, 35 was a big cut for me. 45 is not as bad, but I still got to cut a good 20 pounds. But when I fought Brimage to get a 90-second knockout and last minute notice in the UFC to fight, and Scotland, Glasgow overseas, it was like, it was an uphill battle. I'm trying to do a salt bath and there's no hot water in the hotel at all to cut in weight. And then just, finishing that fight with that right hand, it was unbelievable. Then not to mention watching someone like Uriah Faber, who really made a statement and really made the lighter weight classes, the 135, 145, super popular. To get my hand raised against him was unbelievable. Then, prior to that was the fight in between Yuri Alcantara. Not as much as an opponent, but being able to fight at the Prudential Center. I feel like if you're a Jersey fighter and you never fought at the Prudential Center, you haven't made it yet. To be able to have that first fight and win it at the Prudential Center. I mean, I remember the two loudest times of the night that people talked about after the fight was when I fought and when Rumble Johnson, God rest his soul, knocked out Glover Teixeira and knocked his tooth out, were the two loudest moments. And I was really happy about Jersey at this fight. Obviously, this one of the tops, number one, where, Connecticut wasn't a crazy crowd. It was Mother's Day weekend. It was tough. I come from an organization, Tiger Showman's, where we're family oriented. You have the second most celebrated holiday where, I felt like I let down the promotion a little bit, but I try to explain like, hey, listen, it's really hard to get people out here. It's not. It's 3.5, 4 hours away, but it's also Mother's Day weekend. If it's Father's Day weekend, it's simple. Hey, my gifts is let's go to the fights for Father's Day. You know what I mean? But to have this and speak to people after the fight and say, man, it was loud when you fought. It was unbelievable to have the crowd cheering Jimmy and Tiger Showman, TSK, that old school chant that we have. It was awesome. You know what I mean? It was unbelievable. And just to go out there represent and really to bring another face audience besides bringing Jersey there, but bringing like the police department, the New Jersey State Police, Newark Police, all the police, and be like, hey, this guy, not only that he's a tire showman instructor, a father, a husband, but also a police officer going out there and represented us, I think was awesome. I had so many congratulations. I met so many officers, double the amount that I knew already, but being in the police field. So it was really freaking awesome to go out there, represent, and have my Puerto Rican flag and my blue line flag out there and the American flag. And I mean, it don't get any better with wearing those Rocky shorts, you know what I mean, out there, the red, white, and blue. I mean, that's all American right there. I am Puerto Rican, I am Sicilian, but at the end of the day, I'm an American, Puerto Rican, Sicilian. I was born in the States, you know what I mean? I bleed red, white, and blue. Like, it's just great.
Obviously, you and I have been talking about your career, how great it is. I've been watching it the whole time. And for someone who wasn't, for a fight fan that comes in, 10, 20 years down the road when, one of your daughter's eventual, boyfriends or husbands, and, they're like, oh yeah, my dad used to fight. And you're like, oh really? Like, if you had to summarize your career for someone like that who didn't know, your career a decade from now, what would you say if you had to summarize it yourself?
All my fights just, exciting. Like people, like a couple people came up to me. One person said, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. But then I had a couple other people, man, it's always fun watching you fight. I mean, even I go back and I think about it, Dana White talking about when me and Peter Yan fought. Like that fight was exciting. Like I came in and we brought it. When I fought Pedro Munoz the second time, that card wasn't the best of cards, and it happens. But what made that card shine was the Pedro Munoz and I's fight, where I was fighting on one leg, but I was still fighting. There was no stopping me. I was coming forward, and obviously it was that exciting that we got fight of the night bonuses from that fight. So, and Dana White, his compliments, I appreciate that, and just excited, being an excited fighter, going out there and being game to fight. When I talk about the Kai Stewart fight, that fight mentally, I felt like, even though you said, hey man, it was a exciting fight, it was a close fight, I didn't feel like I felt like Jimmie Rivera could perform really well, and I did not perform that night. And it's always those ones I would love to always get back, but it's one of those things that if I don't, I'm not ashamed of it, because my biggest thing was to go out this past Saturday night and show people what Jimmie Rivera was about. And literally I came to the corner after the first round, dropping Timmy Mason right at the end. My coach is like, you're doing great, just keep doing it. He's looking at me, I'm like, Shion, I'm Ron, I'm here, I know, I'm just here to have fun, man. I'm here to show the world. And at that moment, I was like, I'm nervous before a fight, but there wasn't any pressure. It was really just to go out there and have fun at it. My coaches always tell me every time before we went to a spar session for this camp, just have fun, just have fun. And that kind of like drilled in my head just to go out there, have fun, make my movements, go when I wanted to go. I have really good boxing and never, I always thought maybe I'll do a boxing fight and, put the gloves on and not get beat up as much and get cut so easily. But it was just one of those things that, go out there, have fun, and man, make this your moment. In my head, just make it your moment and really show people who Jimmie Rivera is about.
And you know what? That's sometimes the fighters we remember. It's not necessarily all the champions we remember. Sometimes it's the ones that give us the most joy, the most excitement. I mean, a Jersey guy who everyone remembers, if you're a boxing fan, is Arturo Gatti. He wasn't the best ever. He's not one of the top. He's not going any Mount Rushmores. But the guy went out there and fought his heart out every time. And a lot of people would say that about you as well, I'm sure. You talked about Team Tiger Showman, about all the things you've done with there. I know you own 2 gyms yourself. You talked about that, at the post-fight media day as well. Is that, for you, is that something now that you're going to look into all the years of you going through and teaching these students? Are you going to maybe take another step into, becoming one of the main coaches for Team Tiger and, continuing the next generation of fighters through that organization?
Yeah, when there's always been talks. I've taught, especially prior to my law enforcement, I always taught fight team training. I always had a 1 day a week where I taught the wrestling. Besides myself, I have another teammate, Julio Arce, who's fighting. He's got a fight coming up in October the 25th, and then possibly big plans for 2026. But between him and I had the second best takedown defense. And then all of a sudden, fast forward a couple of years later, he has the #1 takedown defense, beating John Jones. John Jones was before me. And one of the things we would go and teach these guys is wrestling. We have good stand-up. We can stop a takedown and keep it standing, then we're going to dominate striking. And obviously, you can see as Saturday night. So I talked to, Sean Showman, Ron Showman and Tiger about, starting in a week or two, going in on Fridays and teaching the next generation. It's funny, you bring up a lot of the guys that I fought with, a lot of them are retired now. There's only a handful left, and it's these next guys coming up. But the one thing that I think we teach really well and we work on is just grit, man. Putting your head down and just working hard. I never was the most talented person, but I just knew how to work hard and outwork people. Anytime people were leaving the gym from training, we start at 10. Anytime people were leaving the gym, I was still training. I was just finishing up my training as these guys were cutting out early. I just always the stuff you do when no one's looking that really makes you a champion, and it's true. And if I could teach that to these next guys coming up, and we're not fighting schools. We teach kids how to be confident and disciplined, and self-defense, and adults self-defense, and get them in shape. But every now and then I get a couple guys that want to fight, and I'm there to help them out and guide them because I've been there, I've done it, and I know what it takes.
And now you have this second career, this second life of yours besides just combat sports, as you mentioned, a law enforcement officer. I live in a town that you are a law enforcement officer in. Ironically, you and Mike. And I was happy to hear at the post-fight that there were a bunch of officers who unfortunately were not able to make it, because when I saw how many of them were, I started texting my wife, like, you better lock the doors. All the cops are hearing from town. I don't know how many are out patrolling tonight, but, we appreciate your service. We appreciate all you do. You talked about all, the community's events the police department in Elmwood Park does, and there's a lot, and you guys are very active with that. How much did, you being a father and you having children and that perspective and that change that your mind goes through and your life goes through, how much did that help to push you to, the service you do now for your community, being a police officer, being out there, protecting people like your family, protecting children like your daughters?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. Listen, if something's going on with a kid, right now I actually took a position where, primarily handling the juvenile stuff and the follow-ups after something happens with, juvenile matter, we call it. My biggest thing is that, if that was my kid in their situation, whatever it may be, I'm doing everything I can to help. You know what I mean? So I treat every kid like it's my kid. I'm there to help them, there to listen, there to talk to them and say, hey, listen, it's okay to, wear your glasses and not, don't worry about what anybody thinks, don't be shy just because one kid said, don't care what that kid says, to coach these kids and to help them out. I've been there. I've been doing it all my life, helping people out, kids out, especially in Tiger Showman's. Now I get to do it, more publicly as a police officer. And, the kids that come in, not all of them at a low, but being a police officer, all the kids when I talk to, they're at a low or they hit something that made them do something wrong, and I'm there to coach them through it. And my goal always has been, since I took over this new position, just to help one kid. If I could change one kid or help them build their confidence and not, care what people think, get over that anxiety or whatever it may be, that I'm doing my job. And just at least, one a year just is my goal. And if I could do more than one, I'm really, exceeding it. It's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of, background to it. And, some of these guys kids come from broken homes, but do as much as I can to help them, whatever they need. We do, every August, we do a youth police academy, and we have about 150 to 165 kids. So especially after this year, with the kids, it's just a whole different perspective. This is my probably third year doing it. I run it with the other community policing officers, the lieutenant coaches, and Officer Arujo, who in the community policing, and I help run it and take the lead on it. And just when you see school dismissals, everybody's come and say Jimmie or Officer Rivera. It feels good, man. It feels really good. It's good to have those kids, and the biggest thing I want with those kids is that if there's an issue, it's okay to come to us. It's okay to come to me or one of my coworkers. Like, we're here to help you no matter what. Something happens bad, don't worry about it. We're not here to get you in trouble. We're here to help you through it. It's hard to be a kid. It's tough, and sometimes they don't have that guidance at home, or they only have one parent. And I grew up with one parent, so I know how it is. So to be able to go and help them and, see them succeed in life, it feels good.
I don't think there's any better way to end it on a note that you just gave us. Jimmie Rivera, thank you so much. Thank you for the great career and all the fights that you have given us, the entertainment over the years, whether it be in the the local Jersey promotions or Bellator, the UFC, BKFC. Been everywhere, fought everyone, and we have enjoyed watching it throughout. And if this is your last fight, if we don't get you back for Frankie or some other thing that piques your interest at some point, if you don't get the Tom Brady disease where all of a sudden you sit with the kids for a couple extra days, you're like, you know what, I got to get back in the gym. We appreciate everything you've done for us in the fight game, and we appreciate everything you're doing for your community now as an officer of the law and protecting and serving and trying to enlighten these children and everyone else in your community. Thank you so much for everything. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. Listen, I just have one question for you since you asked all the questions. Have I ever pulled you over in town?
No,
and you'll
not
never
yet.
see me pull you over.
I'm a good boy.
Sorry, I had to leave on a soft note. It's going to make me cry.